Amazon says, hey, I'm going to go deliver, pharmaceuticals. Okay, we can do that. I'm going to start shipping my own stuff. Okay, we can go do that. I'm going to do cloud services. Okay, we can do that. And on, because they're a digital company and they have created their culture to share information, share data, create the systems that can do all this. That's how they can pivot.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tech Tea podcast with McLean Forrester. We're Heather and Larry McLean, making technology easy for you to understand. Welcome, Larry. It's good to have you here again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So as we usually roll out the episode every time, and by the way, I need to point out we're in episode 9.
Yeah,
you remember way back when
we've almost made it to 10.
Almost made it to 10. We don't want to be one of those losers that don't make it to 10. We just need one more.
Yep. Well, we'll keep going after that, but it's exciting to know that we've gone this far.
We're not going to retire after 10.
No.
Successful career podcasting.
Like, are you saying I need to find another co-host?
No. I just don't know how long we're in for the long haul.
We're in for the long haul here.
All right. So usually the exciting new news falls on me, and I have to sweat it out and under pressure of like the bright lights on a stage or something. And this time it's on you. So before we begin, I'd love to hear what tea you have for us this week.
Yes. So here's our What's the Tea segment. This week, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sesame AI. So they kind of came out of nowhere with a new conversational AI speech model. And it's a little bit different than like a ChatGPT or other maybe voice to text models. It's made a little bit differently, and it actually feels like you're talking to a person. So they've got a website where you can go out and do a demo with, you can pick Maya or Miles, these two different personalities. And it really feels like you're talking to like an old college chum. It just feels like you're talking to a good old friend, somebody you've known forever. And so it's a little chummy, I would say, like a little, maybe almost too friendly, but it was fun to interact with it because it felt so real. Like it understand my tone, would ask you questions your friend would ask you. Oh, what do you think about that? And, how do you feel about that? So it was fun to try out. This is just the demo capability, so it'll be fun to see what comes next. It reminded me of that movie Her that came out in 2013 with Joaquin Phoenix, and just how, this whole AI personality that seemed like a real person was the idea. Maybe this is the beginning of something like that. So
that's kind of cool. When you say it's kind of chummy, it's like, well, we kind of have geeky friends. It's probably really is quite like our friends. They're chummy, but yeah, they're really, really smart.
Well, it was just very like overly friendly. I think when I say chummy, just like that. And that to me sounds like something you maybe could tweak in the future with the model.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
That sounds cool. I haven't tried. I haven't listened to it yet, so I need to.
We'll give you a link here, flash up a link on the screen here so you guys can check that out.
All right. So I have to wait till the episode comes out.
Maybe you don't, but other people might. All right. So what are we talking about today?
All right. I thought it'd be a good opportunity to talk something very nebulous, really hard to describe, always up for a challenge.
Like we do every one.
Yeah. So this week is digital transformation. So digital transformation sounds nebulous, and it kind of is in a way.
It's a big umbrella topic, right? And it's got a lot of little things underneath it that we can kind of nug through. But if you had to summarize in your mind, I know you had like a certification from MIT in digital transformation. So we're going to treat you like our resident expert on this topic. So like, if you had to summarize it in your own words, what is digital transformation?
It's really taking the opportunity of all the technologies. And as we talk about each time on this podcast, they're rolling out left and right. There's always something new. But honestly, embracing all of these technologies and using them for your business value. It's rethinking your processes. How do I reimagine what I do, whether it's externally facing, whether it's internally facing in my internal operations? How can I reimagine this, but with this technology now as the catalyst? Years ago, you would say, well, you design the process and then you apply the technology to it. Well, now you do it together, because the realm of the possible has drastically changed because of the technology. So there are things you may not ever think about in your processes that could now be digitized. Yeah. So I looked up the Gartner definition. Gartner is always a great resource, right? And they say digital business transformation is the process of exploiting digital technologies and supporting capabilities to create a robust new digital model. okay, that's pretty good, right? But very wordy and everything. But I think Salesforce's definition really kind of hits home and makes it more in plain language, right? It's the practice of using digital technologies to create new, right? So what are the new opportunities? Or modify existing. How do I have organic growth in my operation? How do I get
Mhm.
faster and smarter, right? In business processes, culture, customer experiences, because businesses change, they're always evolving. New market requirements, new markets open up, new possibilities. Every single time you turn around, there's something new out there.
Mhm.
It's a digital system that's going to help you get there.
I've participated in a number of large projects with well known companies doing parts of digital transformation. It's combined. Maybe it's a point of sale, brand new point of sale system with a whole new set of infrastructure to run
Mhm.
it all on. And then there's a digital marketing piece that goes along with that. It's got to be really well coordinated if you're really going to take advantage of sort of all the things that all those new capabilities that you can get with that sort of combination of new technology.
Yeah, and honestly, it's kind of a game changer because historically
Mm-hmm.
IT, data, operations, they would kind of all act independently. And you come up with a large strategy for the organization. Here's something we're going to go do. And now everyone just needs to support
Yeah.
this. And really, it becomes an entirely team game of people participating, right? It's all elements of operations needs to participate, the supporting elements of IT, data, HR, finance, right? And so I
Right.
love the phraseology, it's co-create because you put all of those people in a room and you start brainstorming. You think of ideas of, could we do this? Well, what if we could do that? Hey, there's this new technology that's going to help this, and the ideas just really flow. But it requires all participants to be a part of it.
Yeah, I've seen this go really well, and I've seen this be a dumpster fire, really. And the difference, I think, was leadership at the very top with the vision that everyone shared and everyone on board, right? All the leadership. Where I've seen this gone wrong is where you start having like those layers of management in the middle that maybe they're not all on the same page and they're
A
not
frozen.
all. Yep, they're not all maybe working towards the same end goal. And maybe there's not a great culture and they're kind of vying for power and control over things. This is where I've seen it go really wrong. So there really needs to be like this change management effort around this sort of an adventure.
Mhm.
And everybody's really got to be on board.
And that's really on the implementation side, right? So even before that, as I was mentioning, even in the ideation part, all right, well, how do we think of new ways of doing things? There's so many innovative companies out there, and you don't want to be those companies that don't innovate because you will be left behind.
Yeah.
But on the implementation side, that's very true. And did you see from your experiences that it was like a specific cell, like IT or this team, the project team, that were trying to implement it, and that's why potentially it failed, is just because it didn't feel like a holistic approach?
That's a good question. I would say just there wasn't good leadership buy-in at the from the very top and that spread down through all the parts of the organization because I think you're right where I've seen this go wrong it probably was being driven maybe by the IT group or maybe by a different group and they just didn't have everybody sort of on board with the same vision. So that's pretty critical to making it work because you're talking about changing people's how they work. You're talking about how your customers engage with, if you have customers, if you're in that sort of a business, how they engage with you. You mean you're talking about major changes to an entire organization and how it's run. So
Yeah,
it's big.
it is. What's in the Scottish games when they're carrying the really tall pole.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, you see the thing balancing, and that's kind of when I teach change management, and that's kind of one of the great examples that I use is if you imagine the bottom is the first line people, then the middle of the pole is middle management, and the top of the pole are your senior leaders. You have to, in order to keep that thing upright, they all have to be going in the same direction. Otherwise, it's going
Right.
to topple over this way, it'll topple over that way, and that's really kind of a very simplistic example of that's change management is when you're heading down one of these paths that, hey, we're going to change our business process. This is something new we're going to do. And some organizations are wired for it and some
Mm-hmm.
just are not.
Right. So it could be a whole culture shift for some organizations, and I think that's where the struggles come in when it's maybe not you don't have that change management piece that goes along with it.
Right. And you mentioned the culture. That's a great piece too, because if you look at some great examples, the digital giants such as Amazon, I always use Amazon as an example because they will tell you they sell these things, they've reinvented themselves so many times, but in reality, They haven't. It feels like they've reinvented themselves, but they really haven't, because from day one, they've said, we're a digital company, we're a technology company. And all of these business things that they go do, the reason they can do them so successfully is because at the heart of it, they recognize their data is important, their technology is important, and we can just go do these other things because we have that really tightly wrapped. The retail, supply chain, logistics, media, they're doing it all. And basically the business model is designed to take advantage of the most advanced technologies, right? And to continue to change and disrupt their industry. Amazon says, hey, I'm going to go deliver, pharmaceuticals. Okay, we can do that. I'm going to start shipping my own stuff. Okay, we can go do that. I'm going to do cloud services. Okay, we can do that. And on, because they're a digital company and they have created their culture to share information, share data, create the systems that can do all this. That's how they can pivot.
That's going to be a whole lot easier than when you're dealing with a company that is maybe more sort of isolationist and maybe a little old school, and they've got on-prem everything, and
this is the way I've always done it.
This is the way
this
we've always done it culture. Yeah.
Here.
And so if you've got a "this is the way we've always done it" culture, this is going to be really hard, because that's when you're going to create. That's when you're going to get people arguing over territory and, no, that's my space. This is not good. This isn't how we've done it. I need to decide that. Instead, they need to be in the mindset of, hey, we might need to rethink everything to make this happen.
And kind of moving off change management a little bit, only to say, so to explain to people what is digital transformation. We gave the definition, but that really doesn't necessarily make it tangible, right? And that's why I say it's kind of a nebulous term. Think of Uber. If you think of the taxi cab industry for decades and decades, and all of a sudden, Uber comes out and says, hey, I'm going to do this with an app. That's a digital transformation. It isn't folks being on a radio and a base station and someone calling on the radio to say, hey, I need you to go pick up this person. It is real-time digital tracking of all the drivers. I receive my rides through the digital app. That is total disruption of the industry by Uber on a digital platform. That's what changed it.
Right. I mean, that's a good example of transformation of an industry. I think something maybe smaller would be an organization going through a digital transformation. Have any examples there? I know you mentioned Amazon, but
you look for small ones. So I have great big ones, right? Cleveland Clinic implemented telemedicine solutions, right? Think about that. How do I contact my doctor and ask for referrals or anything else? It's a digital platform.
No, that's a great example, because I've written about this before, how there's still some doctors doing things with old antiquated systems. And then, your doctor was doing everything online. You could go in, schedule an appointment, get your referral, send them a message, get your test results same day, and then there's still some medical facilities doing it all like manually, like we've been doing it 20 years ago.
Just think about that opportunity of, does it attract you to do business with them? And so when I got my annual blood work,
right,
the facility, the hospital where I got my blood taken was only 15 minutes away, something like that. By the time I drove home, in my app, all of my blood results were already in my app, and I could see it 15 minutes later.
Right. So think about the change that a medical facility or hospital would have to go through to get from that manual process to electronic records, near real time handling of information, and that customer interface that's also almost, near real time. That's a lot of change, right? Those are processes. Those are got to be new systems, probably new infrastructure to make that happen, probably different ways of handling data. So there's a lot of change there and then just like the workers, how do medical professionals have to operate differently based on these different capabilities now?
And quite honestly, you can break down digital transformation goals into, I'll say it very simplistically, but into two facets. Can I do it faster? Can I do it better? Right. And
Maybe
because, that comes with it. Right.
Yeah.
And so if in my example of getting my blood work done, how many humans in the loop did I just eliminate where mistakes can happen? And even one of the most really cool things on my last annual physical was my doctor and I had probably a half-hour conversation throughout the whole appointment. And at the very beginning, she had asked me, do you mind if I record this? Because we have an AI capability, as I ask you questions that are intermixed with our normal conversation, that's going to automatically fill out the form that I need filled out.
I love that.
It worked. It worked incredibly well because we went on tangents on all kinds of things, but at the end, I saw the transcript of the form that got filled out, and it extracted exactly what it needed and put it right exactly where it needed to be. And that was phenomenal. And the doctor said what that did for her was transfer the hour or whatever of transcribing information into an hour of seeing patients.
Right. So she could actually just be there with the patient and have those conversations and let the tools do the capturing of the information, because that's would normally be like her sitting there typing things in and really distracted from, probably pausing the conversation you have at the time to do that. So that's pretty amazing. It's just amazing. Now, where would a company start? Like, let's say somebody had an idea of what they wanted to do. Like, where would we start with that?
So really, it starts with the ideation, right? How many companies are really on top of all of the emerging technologies
Right.
that you can bring to bear
You
today?
can't be.
Right, right. And so you really want people who are well versed in the emerging technologies of today, because if you say, well, I read a few things and we're going to think about digital transformation, if you're not constantly reading, you're already behind.
Well, I
So,
would even, sorry to interrupt you, I
no,
would
go ahead.
even go back to like, what is it we're trying to accomplish with this, right?
Right.
Because we don't want to do any technology for technology's sake. So, what are our goals? Are we trying to increase sales? Are we trying to provide a better customer experience? Are we just trying to be more efficient in our own internal operations? So, right, like let's start with what's the pain we're feeling? What are the goals we want to get to? And then I think from there, you can work your way through, okay, what would we have to change to get to that goal? And then, eventually you get to what's the technology that pairs along with that? What are the process improvements or changes we need to make? What's the change management effort look like? So like, and that's a fun part when you start way at the beginning with, in a room or in a virtual room, going through that process. You can do that in probably a half a day to a day, usually, and you come out with a really nice roadmap of where you want to go. That's fun. I love to do those.
And it's interesting because the model has shifted because it can be done really one of two ways. One is exactly like you just said, is you kind of have a pain point, you've had an observation, you've done a strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats kind of analysis, and you said, okay, here's where we need to get better. We've done self-analysis over here, and I think we can improve here. And you think and you drive it that way. There are other cases where think of generative AI now over the last 3 years. You go, how could we use that?
Mm.
Not to IT, not technology for the sake of technology, but it gets your creative juices flowing. Well, I think I could apply that over here. And then it makes you start to think about the process because the
Mm-hmm.
technology drives the innovation to say, hey, I really think this process could be changed by this. Think of Google Maps, right? How many people still use paper maps? The technology drove the change. It wasn't, hey, I'm really tired of using paper maps, I'm going to look for something else. No, you saw the technology and said, I'm going to adopt that because I can see the value.
Yeah, and I can think of times where the technology is out there, but maybe even you're not even sure how you could leverage it.
Right.
And then it's like, who knew you could? I always use the example of like my smartwatch, right? When they first came out, I was like, I don't even know what you would do on your watch. What would you do with that? I was having trouble envisioning it. And now it's like, oh, yeah, I wear it every day. It's the only watch I use. And it's not like invaluable, but it's, I use it a lot during the day. And it was hard for me to picture what the realm of the possibility was. And I think a lot of people can get stuck in that too.
Yeah. And you have those kind of early adopters that show everyone else what it could
Exactly.
do. Right.
Or trusted advisors, maybe
Right.
like us, who we certainly don't know all the answers, but we read and we research the stuff, and so we do have a good idea of what could be possible with technology.
Right. And if you think it's just accelerating so fast because
It is.
if you go back, 30 years, what was the limitations? Well, your compute power, you really didn't have the compute power. And then you didn't really have enough storage. So we weren't capturing data, we weren't processing
Right.
data because
Paper.
storage was expensive, right? Then you've had data growth, and they went into analytics. And then, kind of now we've moved into these intelligent ecosystems.
Yeah.
So now, to your point, you said, okay, well, what would I look at? You really want someone who can come in and know the difference between a large language model, generative AI, vertical gen AI, agentic AI, and all of these technologies keep coming. And it's not like, well, I'm going to apply agentic AI and that's my answer. No, it's different tools for different things. Just
Right.
imagine all of those new AI capabilities in a toolbox, and you're going to fix a process. And it's not just one tool that you're going to pull out of there to fix your
Yep,
process.
exactly. Well, I think we hit on that pretty well. I hope that gives our listeners a good understanding of what is digital transformation. And if you're interested in hearing more about that, reach out to us. We always say this, but we'd love to just chat and meet everybody, and we'll love to have a no risk call with you and see what we might be able to help you with. That's really why we're here, to do service to others and to help where we can.
I would add to that, you and I both embrace technology. We've been heavily in technology. That's why we're doing this. We'll go back 15 years. We cut our teeth on process improvements.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done many, many process improvements. So if you put the technology experience and the process improvement experience together, that's really what you should look for. If it's not us, at least find someone who has both of those skills, because you need both.
Yep. All right. Awesome. Well, I think this wraps up another great episode of the Tech Tea Podcast. Join us next time in a couple of weeks. And until then, take care, everybody.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.